The bright lights of the Galactic Council chamber hurt Captain Jake Morrison's eyes as he stood waiting in the observer section. 3 years ago, he would have felt proud to be here, representing humanity among the stars. Today felt different. The air itself seemed heavy with judgment. Chancellor Vexstar rose from his crystalline throne, his 6 arms spreading wide in what looked like a gesture of authority. The Zilithian leader's blue skin glowed with patterns that Jake had learned. Meant displeasure? Around the circular chamber, representatives from 11 other alien species sat in their designated seats, watching the proceedings with various expressions that Jake couldn't quite read. The matter before us today concerns the membership status of the species known as humans, Chancellor Vexstar announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation system. After careful consideration and multiple incidents, the Council has reached a unanimous decision. Jake felt his stomach drop. He glanced toward the diplomatic section where Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake had worked with her long enough to see the tension in her shoulders. She knew what was coming too. Ambassador Cryanol, a tall insectoid creature with golden shell plates, stood to address the chamber. His compound eyes reflected the light as he turned toward the human delegation. The species called humans have been members of this council for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. In that short time, they have caused more disruption than any species in recent memory. The words hit Jake like physical blows. He remembered the mining dispute on Kepler 442b, where human colonists had refused to surrender their claims to a Vorthek expansion fleet. The humans had been there first, had followed all the proper procedures, but the Vorthaks claimed ancient territorial rights. When negotiations failed, the human miners had fought back. They won. The incident at the Centauri mining complex, Ambassador Cryanol continued, demonstrated the humans' unwillingness to accept peaceful resolution. Rather than yield to established territorial claims, they chose violence. Lisa Hayes requested permission to speak. Chancellor Vexstar granted it with obvious reluctance. She stood, her uniform crisp and professional. Honored council members, the Centauri incident was a case of self-defense. Our people had legal mining rights properly filed and approved by this very council. When the Vorthak fleet arrived with weapons charged and demands for immediate evacuation, our miners had every right to defend themselves. Legal technicalities, Ambassador Kreidel dismissed. The Vorthak territorial claim predates human presence in that system by centuries. A civilized species would have withdrawn peacefully. Jake wanted to shout that the Vorthak claim had never been officially registered, that the so-called ancient rights were just excuses for expansion. But he wasn't here to speak. He was here to witness humanity's trial. Chancellor Vexstar gestured for silence. The Centauri incident was merely one example. The Council has documented 47 separate conflicts involving human colonies in the past year alone. 47 incidents where humans chose aggression over diplomacy. The number was misleading, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Most of those conflicts were minor disputes over trade routes, resource allocation, or territorial boundaries. In each case, human representatives had tried to negotiate first. But when other species saw humanity as weak or inexperienced, they pushed harder. And humans, Jake knew from experience, didn't like being pushed. Dr. Zindar, one of the few council members who had always been friendly toward humans, activated his speaking crystal. His crystalline form shimmered as he spoke. Honored Chancellor, perhaps we should consider the positive contributions humans have made. Their medical advances have saved countless lives across multiple species. Their engineering solutions have improved space travel efficiency by 23%. Their military contributions to the Outer Rim peacekeeping force have been exemplary, added another voice. Jake couldn't see who spoke, but the electronic modulation suggested it was one of the synthetic intelligences. Chancellor Vexstar's skin patterns shifted to deeper blue. These contributions do not outweigh the fundamental incompatibility between human nature and civilized galactic society. Humans are, by their very evolution, a predator species. They have not learned to control their aggressive impulses. Jake thought about Earth's history, about the wars and conflicts that had shaped human development. But he also thought about the peace that had come afterward, the unity that had allowed humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. Humans had learned to control their impulses. They had just never learned to be pushovers. The final incident, Ambassador Krynal announced, occurred just 2 weeks ago in the Proxima system. A human patrol ship, the Aurora, deliberately rammed a Nexarian customs vessel during a routine inspection. Lisa Hayes was on her feet before permission was granted. That is completely false. Captain Ryan Davis saved the customs vessel from destruction. The Nexarian ship had suffered engine failure and was falling toward the system's star. Captain Davis used his ship to push the vessel to safety, at considerable risk to his own crew. The Nexarian report states otherwise, Chancellor Vextar said coldly. They report an unprovoked attack that damaged their ship and injured 3 crew members. Jake knew Ryan Davis personally. The man had risked everything to save alien lives, and now those same aliens were calling him a criminal. It was the kind of twisted logic that made Jake understand why so many humans were getting frustrated with council politics. The vote was quick and merciless. 11 species voted for expulsion. Only Dr. Zindar's people abstained. Not a single species voted to keep humanity in the council, Ambassador. Krynal approached the human delegation with what might have been satisfaction in his compound eyes. By unanimous decision of the Galactic Cooperation Council, the species known as humans is hereby expelled from membership. All human settlements outside your home system must be evacuated within 6 standard months. All council technology and resources must be returned. All diplomatic ties are severed effective immediately. Lisa Hayes accepted the formal documents. With steady hands, we understand the council's decision. Humanity will comply with all requirements. As they left the chamber, Jake felt eyes following them. Some looked relieved. Others seemed almost worried. Dr. Zindar caught Jake's eye and made a subtle gesture. That could have been an apology. Back on the space station New Horizon, Admiral Steve Parker was waiting in the communication center. His weathered face showed no surprise when Lisa delivered the news. 6 months for complete withdrawal, he repeated. That's actually generous. I expected worse. What do we do now? Jake asked. The Admiral's expression hardened. Now we implement Protocol 7. It's time for humanity to stand on its own. Jake had heard whispers about Protocol 7 but never knew the details. All he knew was that it had been prepared for exactly this situation. Looking at the Admiral's grim smile, he suspected the Council had just made a very dangerous mistake. The evacuation began 3 days after the Council's decision. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in her laboratory on Kepler 442b, watching her research assistants pack decades of work into transport containers. 20 years of xenobiology research, countless discoveries about alien plant life, all being boxed up and shipped back to Earth. Doctor, what should we do with the seedling samples? Asked her assistant. Pointing to rows of alien plants that had taken years to cultivate, Amanda looked at the specimens she had spent so long studying. Each one represented a breakthrough in understanding how life could develop in different environments. Pack them carefully. We're taking everything with us. The young man looked confused. But the Council regulations say we can't remove native biological samples from member worlds. We're not members anymore, Amanda said quietly. And these plants were grown from seeds we legally collected during our research period. They're coming home with us. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 43 human colonies. On the mining world of Centauri Prime, workers dismantled equipment they had built with their own hands. The mines they were forced to abandon would produce millions of credits worth of rare minerals. But none of that would benefit humanity anymore, Captain. Ryan Davis guided his transport ship Aurora through the Centauri system for what he knew would be the last time. His cargo holds were packed with evacuees and their belongings. In the distance, he could see Vorthok ships already moving toward the abandoned mining stations. They didn't waste any time, his co-pilot Jake Miller observed. Ryan watched the alien ships with disgust. 3 hours after we broadcast our departure, they were here. Makes you wonder if they planned this whole thing. The evacuation wasn't going smoothly everywhere. On Tau Ceti, the local Nixarian governor had demanded that humans leave behind all infrastructure as compensation for environmental damage. When the human administrator had refused, Nixarian ships had surrounded the colony. That's when things got interesting. The USS Defiance, under Captain Jake Morrison's command, had arrived in the Tau Ceti system just as the standoff began. The Nixarians had 20 ships, Morrison had one. But his orders were clear: protect evacuating humans at all costs. Nixarian commander, this is Captain Morrison. You will allow our transport ships safe passage. The Nixarian response was predictably arrogant. Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender. Your people must face justice for their crimes against this world. Morrison looked at his tactical officer. Crimes? They built water purification systems and planted forests. If that's a crime, I'm proud to be a criminal. The Nixarians opened fire first. That was their mistake. The Defiance tore through their formation like a wolf among sheep. Human military doctrine had evolved from centuries of warfare, and it showed. While other species in the galaxy had grown comfortable with ritual combat and formal battle procedures, humans had learned to win by any means necessary. Within an hour, 15 Nixarian ships were drifting dead in space. The other 5 had fled. The evacuation continued without further interruption. News of the Tau Ceti incident spread quickly through Council space. Some species expressed outrage at human aggression. Others quietly noted that 20-1 odds hadn't been enough. The message was clear: humanity might be leaving, but they weren't running scared. Back on Earth, President Karen Mitchell addressed a joint session of the Global Assembly. The chamber was packed with representatives from every human nation, all waiting to hear how their species would move forward. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady and clear. Today we face a choice that will define our future among the stars. The Galactic Council has rejected us, claiming we are too violent, too unpredictable for civilized society. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some angry, some hurt, others defiant. They say we are warmongers who cannot learn peace. They say we are primitives who do not understand cooperation. They are wrong on both counts, but perhaps it is better that they believe these things. The president paused, letting her words sink in. For too long, we have tried to prove ourselves worthy of their acceptance. We have followed their rules, respected their customs, and sought their approval. That ends today. She activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. Humanity will no longer seek membership in any galactic organization. We will not beg for acceptance or prove our worthiness to those who have already judged us. Instead, we will focus on becoming the best version of ourselves. The display zoomed in on Mars, showing massive construction projects already underway. The Olympus shipyards will be expanded tenfold. Our research stations will develop technologies that serve human needs, not alien bureaucracies. Our military will be restructured to defend human interests, not council politics. Admiral Steve Parker watched the speech from his command center. Surrounded by officers implementing Protocol 7, the plan had been developed years earlier, when it became clear that human membership in the council might not be permanent. Everything from industrial capacity to defensive strategies had been secretly redesigned with independence in mind. Phase 1 is complete, reported Colonel Danny Wright, his intelligence chief. All sensitive technology has been removed from former colonies. The Tau Ceti evacuation was the last major operation. Parker nodded. Casualties? Surprisingly light. The Nixarians lost more ships than expected, but no human deaths. Captain Morrison's tactical innovations worked perfectly. The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. Morrison had used a new combat doctrine that combined traditional human aggression with zero-point energy weapons that the Council had never seen. The result had been devastatingly effective. What about our friends in the Council? Parker asked. Any support? Wright consulted his reports. Dr. Zindar sent a private message expressing regret about the decision. A few others have reached out through unofficial channels, but publicly they're all maintaining distance, Parker understood. Species that had spent centuries building their reputation couldn't risk association with the galaxy's newest pariahs. It was disappointing, but not surprising. Meanwhile, on the edge of Council space, strange energy signatures were being detected by deep space monitoring stations. The readings were unlike anything in existing databases, but they were dismissed as equipment malfunctions or natural phenomena. After all, the galaxy had more important things to worry about than mysterious energy readings from empty space. Chief Engineer Monica Bell was putting the finishing touches on humanity's newest project, the Sentinel Defense Network. Hidden construction. Facilities in the asteroid belt had been working around the clock to build something unprecedented. While the Council worried about human aggression, humanity was quietly revolutionizing defensive technology. The quantum tunnel drives are showing 97% efficiency, Bell reported to Admiral Parker during their weekly briefing. We'll be able to deploy anywhere in the solar system within minutes. Parker studied the technical specifications. Human engineering had always been practical rather than elegant, but this was something special. The new technology would make humanity's defensive capabilities unlike anything the galaxy had seen. As the last human ships cleared Council space, many species breathed easier. The dangerous humans were gone, confined to their single star system. The galaxy could return to its civilized ways. They had no idea what was coming from the dark space beyond the galactic rim. And they had no idea that their greatest mistake was sending away the only species that might be able to help them survive. 2 years had passed since humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Council. The galaxy had settled into a comfortable routine without the troublesome humans, causing diplomatic incidents every few months. Chancellor Vexstar received regular praise for his wise decision to remove the warlike species before they could cause real damage to galactic peace. In the council chambers, Ambassador Crionel presented his annual report on galactic stability. Crime rates have dropped by 18% since the human departure. Trade disputes are down 24%. Military incidents have reached their lowest levels in over a century. The assembled representatives nodded approvingly. Several species had expanded into territories formerly occupied by human colonies. The Vortex had claimed the Centauri mining operations and were extracting record amounts of valuable minerals. The Nexarians had turned the former human research station on Tau Ceti into a military base, claiming it was necessary for system security. The decision to expel the humans was clearly correct, Chancellor Vexstar announced to general agreement. The galaxy is more peaceful and prosperous without their disruptive influence. But not everyone shared this satisfaction. Dr. Zindar sat in his crystalline chamber aboard the science vessel Enlightenment, studying readings that made no sense. For the past 6 months, his deep space sensors had been detecting energy signatures from the galactic rim that didn't match any known phenomena. The patterns were unlike anything in the Council's extensive databases. The energy readings suggested massive objects moving at incredible speeds, but whenever survey ships were sent to investigate, they found nothing but empty space. 3 ships had gone missing in the past month while investigating these anomalies, but the Council had dismissed their disappearances as equipment failures or navigation errors. Dr. Zindar knew better. His species had developed space travel when most Council races were still discovering fire. The crystalline people understood the cosmos in ways that others couldn't comprehend. These energy readings weren't natural phenomena. They were artificial. And they were getting stronger. He activated his private communication array and sent an encrypted message to Earth. Dr. Amanda Foster had been one of his closest research partners during humanity's council membership. If anyone would understand the implications of his findings, it would be her. On Earth, humanity was thriving in isolation. The Olympus shipyards on Mars had expanded beyond all original projections. Where once there had been a single construction facility, now there were dozens of massive yards, producing ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Colonel Danny Wright stood on the observation deck of the primary facility, watching the latest Guardian-class vessel take shape. The ship was sleek and deadly, incorporating technologies that human engineers had developed in secret during their council membership and perfected during their exile. The quantum armor is showing excellent test results, reported Chief Engineer Monica Bell as she joined him at the viewport. Energy weapons that would cripple council ships barely scratched the surface, Wright nodded with satisfaction. What about the offensive capabilities? Beyond specifications. The plasma cannons can punch through standard council shielding like it's made of paper, and the quantum torpedoes ... Bell smiled. Let's just say they would surprise anyone who thinks humans only understand crude projectile weapons. The Guardian-class ships were just one part of humanity's defensive revolution. The Sentinel stations scattered throughout the solar system represented technology that made the Council's best military hardware look primitive. Each station could defend against entire fleets, and they were all connected by quantum communication. Networks that operated faster than traditional FTL, Admiral Steve Parker reviewed the latest reports from his command center on Luna. 2 years of intensive development had transformed humanity's military capabilities beyond recognition. Where once they had relied on purchased council technology and adapted alien designs, now they possessed weapons and defenses that were purely human innovations. The new recruits are adapting well to the enhanced combat training, reported Captain Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to head the new Tactical Development Division. The zero-gravity combat simulations are producing soldiers who can outfight any council species. Parker studied the training footage showing human soldiers moving through complex battle scenarios with fluid precision. The training programs incorporated lessons learned from every conflict humans had fought, both on Earth and in space. The result was a fighting force that could adapt to any situation and overcome any opponent. What's the status on the Deep Space Monitoring Network? Parker asked. Morrison's expression grew serious. That's where things get interesting. We've been tracking unusual energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. The pattern suggests large-scale movement of unknown objects. This matched the encrypted message they had received from Dr. Zindar, the crystalline. Scientists' data painted a disturbing picture of something vast and hostile approaching from outside the galaxy. His analysis suggested that whatever was coming possessed technology far beyond anything the council races had developed. President Karen Mitchell had authorized a classified response to Dr. Zindar's message, sharing some of humanity's sensor data with the alien scientist. The combined analysis painted an even more alarming picture. Something was definitely coming, and it was moving faster than anyone had initially calculated. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Amanda Foster worked with a team of scientists to analyze every piece of data they could gather about the approaching threat. Her xenobiology expertise, combined with advanced human sensor technology, was producing theories that kept her awake at night. The energy patterns suggest artificial intelligence, she reported to Admiral Parker during their weekly briefing, but not like the synthetic intelligences in the Council. This is something older, more advanced, and completely hostile to organic life. The implications were staggering. If Dr. Foster's analysis was correct, the galaxy was about to face an enemy that viewed all biological species as threats to be eliminated. The approaching force showed no interest in communication or negotiation. It simply consumed everything in its path and moved on. Meanwhile, in council space, the first signs of trouble were being dismissed as minor incidents. A patrol ship disappeared near the outer veil. A research station went silent without explanation. A mining colony reported strange readings before losing all contact. Ambassador Cryanol filed each incident as equipment failure or natural disaster. The idea that something hostile might be approaching the galaxy was inconceivable. After all, the Council's military forces were the strongest the galaxy had ever seen. No external threat could possibly challenge their combined might. Chancellor Vextar was particularly dismissive of the reports. Isolated incidents, he declared during a council session, probably caused by solar flares or equipment malfunctions. There is no credible evidence of any external threat. But the incidents were increasing in frequency. and they were getting closer to the core systems. Back on Earth, humanity watched and waited. Their exile had given them time to prepare for threats that the Council couldn't even imagine. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would discover the cost of dismissing the only species that might be able to save them. The calm before the storm was ending, and humanity was ready for what came next. The invasion came without warning at 0347 Galactic Standard Time on a Tuesday that would be remembered as the darkest day in Council history. The Nexarian Defense Fleet, patrolling the Outer Veil region, detected massive energy signatures approaching at impossible speeds. Admiral Vexfer ordered his ships to intercept. Confident that his 40-vessel fleet could handle any threat, he was wrong. The machines that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were massive geometric constructs of dark metal and pulsing energy, each one larger than a Nexarian battlecruiser. Their weapons fired streams of pure destruction that cut through shields and armor like they were made of paper. Admiral Vexfer's flagship lasted exactly 14 minutes. His final transmission was a desperate warning. Unknown hostiles using adaptive weapons. They learn from every shot we fire. All ships are lost, warned the Council. These things are not from our galaxy. The transmission cut to static as the Nexarian fleet died in the void. Within hours, the Devourers began their systematic advance into Council space. That was what Dr. Zindar called them when the first coherent reports reached the inner systems. The name fit perfectly because that's exactly what they did. They consumed everything. The machines didn't just destroy military targets. They harvested entire worlds, stripping away atmosphere and converting matter into more of themselves. Planets that had supported billions of lives became empty husks in a matter of days. The speed of their advance was terrifying. Chancellor Vextar called an emergency council session as reports flooded in from the outer systems. The chamber that had once been filled with confident discussions about trade and diplomacy now echoed with panic and desperation. 17 systems have gone dark in the past week, reported Ambassador Crional, his compound eyes reflecting the stress of sleepless nights. The Vorthak home fleet engaged the invaders 3 days ago. Only 2 ships escaped to report total defeat. The Vorthak representative, normally arrogant and demanding, sat silent in his designated area. His species had been among the galaxy's most aggressive military powers. If they couldn't stop these invaders, who could? Dr. Zindar activated his speaking crystal. Honored council members, my analysis of the enemy suggests they are ancient machine intelligences from beyond our galaxy. Their technology appears designed specifically to counter organic life and the conventional weapons we use. Impossible, declared the Zilithian military commander. No force could be powerful enough to overcome our combined fleets. The Council controls the largest military in galactic history. Dr. Zindar's crystalline form flickered with patterns of deep concern. Commander, these machines have already destroyed more ships than the entire Nexarian defense fleet. They adapt to our tactics in real time. Every weapon we use against them becomes less effective with each engagement. The truth was even worse than Dr. Zindar realized. The Devourers weren't just adapting to Council tactics. They were learning from every encounter, building detailed profiles of every species' technology and military doctrine. Each battle made them stronger while making the Council forces weaker. On Kepler Prime, one of the most heavily defended worlds in Council space, the local defense commander watched his sensors in disbelief. 18 Devourer ships approaching. All defense grids are active. Planetary shields at maximum power. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Kepler Prime was a dead world, and the 18 Devourer ships had become 24. They had not only destroyed the defenders, but had used the planet's resources to build more of themselves. The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. The Devourers would arrive, engage any resistance, adapt to overcome it, harvest the planet's resources, and move on stronger than before. It wasn't war in any conventional sense. It was extermination. In the council chambers, panic had replaced the usual diplomatic protocols. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action that no one knew how to take. Their combined military might was being swept aside like leaves in a storm. "We need to contact the synthetic intelligences," suggested one delegate. "Their electronic nature might give them advantages against these machines." "Already tried," Ambassador Cryanel replied grimly. The AI collective was the first target the invaders hit. They absorbed all the synthetic minds and used their processing power to enhance their own capabilities. Chancellor Vexstar stood at the center of the chaos, his blue skin pattern shifting through colors that indicated severe stress. The leader, who had confidently expelled humanity from the Council, now faced the complete destruction of everything he had sworn to protect. "What about evacuation?" asked the crystalline representative. "Can we relocate our populations to the inner systems?" "The invaders are moving too fast," Dr. Zindar replied. "They're not following predictable routes. 3 separate fleets are converging on the core worlds from different directions. They've already cut off most evacuation routes." As if to emphasize the point, alarms began sounding throughout the council complex. Emergency broadcasts announced that Devourer forces had been detected just 2 systems away from the galactic capital in his private chambers. Ambassador Cryanel made a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Earth, breaking every regulation about contact with expelled species. "Admiral Parker, this is Ambassador Cryanel of the Galactic Council. We need help. The galaxy is dying." On Earth, Admiral Parker received the transmission in his command center. The man who had watched humanity's expulsion with grim acceptance now held the fate of the galaxy in his hands. Around him, his staff waited for orders. "Sir," asked Colonel Wright, "should we respond?" Parker studied the tactical displays showing Devourer movements throughout Council space. Human deep space sensors had been tracking the invasion since it began. They knew exactly how bad the situation had become. "Patch me through to President Mitchell," Parker ordered. "It's time for humanity to make a choice." Captain Jake Morrison monitored the situation from his ship at the edge of the Sol system. His orders were simple: observe and report. Do not engage. Humanity was no longer part of galactic affairs, and Earth's leaders were under no obligation to help the species that had rejected them. But Morrison remembered his years working with alien colleagues. Dr. Zindar had always treated humans with respect and friendship. Many individual aliens had been decent people caught up in their government's prejudices. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving desperate transmissions from evacuating council ships. They're requesting permission to enter Sol system as refugees." Morrison looked at the display showing hundreds of alien vessels fleeing the advancing Devourers. Families, children, civilians who had never voted to expel humanity but would die because of their leaders' decisions. "Maintain position," Morrison ordered, though the words felt like poison. "We have our orders." The galaxy that had rejected humanity was dying, and humanity had to decide whether to let it burn or risk everything to save the people who had thrown them away. The emergency session of the Global Defense Council lasted 18 hours. President Karen Mitchell sat at the head of the table, surrounded by humanity's most important leaders, all facing the most difficult decision in their species' history. The holographic displays showed the ongoing destruction in council space with ruthless clarity. Admiral Steve Parker presented the military analysis first. "The Devourers have consumed 68% of council territory. Their advance rate is accelerating as they absorb more resources and technology. At current speed, they'll reach the galactic core within 6 weeks. And then?" asked Secretary of Defense William Clark. "Then they'll have access to the galaxy's most advanced manufacturing centers and largest populations. They'll become unstoppable." Dr. Amanda Foster stepped forward with her xenobiological assessment. "The Devourers aren't just machines. They're a collective intelligence that learns and adapts from every encounter. They've already absorbed the knowledge of 17 different species and their technologies." President Mitchell studied the data scrolling across her personal display. "What are our chances if we intervene now?" "Better than the Council's," Admiral Parker replied. Our technology operates on principles they haven't encountered. The quantum tunnel drives, adaptive AI systems, and plasma weapons might surprise them initially, but they learn fast. Commander Alex Turner, who had overseen humanity's technological development during their isolation, stood to address the room. The real question isn't whether we can win. It's whether we should try. The council expelled us. They called us warmongers and primitives. Why should we risk human lives to save people who threw us away? The argument that followed was intense and emotional. Half the council wanted to let the galaxy burn. They pointed out that humanity had tried cooperation and been rejected. Earth was safe behind its defensive networks. Why should they risk everything for species that had shown them nothing but contempt? The other half argued for intervention. On moral grounds, Colonel Danny Wright spoke for many when he said, "We're not fighting for the council. We're fighting for the billions of innocent civilians who had nothing to do with our expulsion. Children, families, entire worlds of people who don't deserve to die because their leaders made bad decisions." President Mitchell listened to both sides before making her decision. "We're going to help. Not because we owe the council anything, but because it's the right thing to do. And because Turner is correct about one thing, if we don't stop them now, eventually they'll come for us too." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. They were committing humanity to a war against an enemy that had already destroyed the galaxy's most powerful military forces. "However," the president continued, "we do this on our terms. Not as council members or allies, but as an independent force acting in our own interests. We save who we can, but our primary objective is stopping the Devourers before they become too powerful to defeat." Admiral Parker began mobilizing the most advanced fleet in human history. The Guardian-class battleships emerged from hidden construction facilities throughout the solar system. Each ship represented technology that had been developed in secret during humanity's exile, incorporating lessons learned from studying council weaknesses and Devourer tactics. Captain Jake Morrison took command of the flagship Defiance, now upgraded with quantum armor and weapons that could penetrate any known shielding. His crew consisted of the best-trained soldiers humanity had ever produced, men and women who had studied every aspect of galactic warfare and improved upon it. "Remember," Morrison told his officers during their final briefing, "we're not here to follow council protocols or observe their rules of engagement. We're here to win. These machines destroyed 17 species because those species fought like civilized beings. We're going to fight like humans." The first test of humanity's new military doctrine came at the Proxima threshold, where the last remnants of the Vorthak fleet were making a desperate stand against 12 Devourer ships. The alien vessels were losing badly, their conventional weapons having little effect on the adaptive machine defenses. Morrison's fleet dropped out of quantum tunnel space directly behind the Devourer formation. The surprise was complete. Human plasma cannons tore through machine hulls before the Devourers could adapt their defenses. Quantum torpedoes bypassed energy shields entirely, detonating inside enemy ships and causing massive internal damage. In 12 minutes, 8 Devourer ships were destroyed. The remaining 4 tried to retreat, but human pursuit craft caught them before they could escape. For the first time since the invasion began, a Devourer force had been completely eliminated without causing any friendly casualties. The surviving Vorthak ships broadcast messages of amazement and gratitude, the same species that had claimed human territory after their expulsion now owed their lives to human intervention. Morrison acknowledged their thanks briefly before moving on to the next engagement. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Cryono arrived aboard a council diplomatic ship, escorted by human fighters through the Sol System's defensive network. The insectoid diplomat who had delivered humanity's expulsion notice now came as a beggar, seeking help from the species he had dismissed as primitive. President Mitchell received him in the same conference room, where she had announced humanity's isolation doctrine. The symbolism was intentional and not lost on either leader. "President Mitchell," Cryono began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, "I come to formally request military assistance against the Devourer threat." The Council is prepared to offer full membership restoration and significant territorial concessions in exchange for your help. The President's response was calm but firm. Ambassador, your offer is noted but unnecessary. Humanity has already decided to act against the Devourers. However, we will not be rejoining the Council or accepting your territorial offers. We will fight as an independent force. Crynal compound eyes showed confusion. But why would you help without demanding compensation? We expelled your species. We called you unfit for civilization. President Mitchell smiled coldly. Because, Ambassador, we are exactly what you accused us of being. We are warriors. And sometimes the galaxy needs warriors more than it needs diplomats. As the meeting concluded, reports arrived of human forces engaging Devourer fleets across multiple systems. Each engagement showed the same pattern: human tactics and technology that the machines couldn't predict or counter. For the first time since the invasion began, the Devourers were being pushed back, but the war was far from over. The machines were learning from each defeat, adapting their strategies to counter human advantages. The real test would come when they reached the Galactic core, where the largest Devourer force was preparing for a final assault that would determine the fate of all organic life in the galaxy. Humanity had chosen to fight. Now they had to prove they could win. The Battle of Proxima Threshold became the turning point that military historians would study for centuries. Captain Jake Morrison led the combined human fleet in a campaign that systematically dismantled Devourer forces across 12 star systems. Each engagement proved that human military doctrine was uniquely effective against the machine intelligence. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes coordinated the fleet operations from her position aboard the command ship Defiance. The diplomatic officer who had once tried to keep peace between humans and aliens now directed the destruction of humanity's greatest enemy. Her tactical displays showed Devourer forces retreating for the first time since their invasion began. Enemy fleet is withdrawing from the Centauri system, reported her communications officer. They're abandoning 3 partially harvested worlds and falling back toward the Galactic core. Morrison studied the tactical situation with satisfaction. They're learning that human tactics don't follow their predictable patterns. Every time they adapt to our last strategy, we change to something completely different. The key to human success was something the Devourers couldn't understand: organized chaos. While other species followed rigid military doctrines that could be analyzed and countered, humans had learned warfare through millennia of fighting their own kind. Their tactics were unpredictable because they had evolved to surprise and confuse. Intelligent opponents. Dr. Amanda Foster made the breakthrough discovery while analyzing captured Devourer technology aboard the research vessel Darwin. Her xenobiological expertise, combined with human engineering insights, revealed a critical weakness in the machine intelligence network. They're not truly independent units, she explained to Admiral Parker during an encrypted communication. Each Devourer ship is connected to a central hive mind through quantum entanglement channels. If we can disrupt those channels, we can isolate individual ships and destroy them before they can adapt. Admiral Parker immediately shared this intelligence with his fleet commanders. Within hours, human engineers had developed quantum disruption, weapons specifically designed to sever the connections between Devourer ships. The effect was dramatic. Isolated Devourer vessels became vulnerable to conventional attacks and could be destroyed by standard human weapons. The war's decisive moment came at the Galactic core, where the largest Devourer force had gathered around. An ancient construct that served as their primary command nexus? Intelligence reports suggested this facility was coordinating the entire invasion and producing new Devourer ships at an alarming rate. Captain Ryan Davis volunteered to lead the assault on the command nexus. His ship Aurora had been retrofitted with experimental quantum weapons and enough firepower to level a small moon. The mission was essentially suicide: penetrate the most heavily defended position in the galaxy and destroy the source of the Devourer threat. "I won't lie to you," Davis told his crew before the final assault. "We probably won't make it back. But if we succeed, we save every living thing in this galaxy. That's worth dying for." The assault began with Morrison's fleet engaging the outer defensive perimeter while Davis led a smaller force directly toward the command nexus. The plan was simple: create enough chaos to let the Aurora reach its target and deploy the quantum virus that Dr. Foster had developed. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships used quantum tunnel drives to appear and disappear throughout the battlefield, striking at Devourer weak points before vanishing again. The machine's adaptive capabilities were overwhelmed by the sheer unpredictability of human tactics. Colonel Danny Wright directed the final phase of the assault from his flagship Vengeance. As Davis's ship penetrated the inner defensive grid, Wright's forces held off waves of Devourer reinforcements trying to intercept the Aurora. "Davis is through the outer ring," Wright reported to Morrison. "He's taken heavy damage but still on course for the Nexus." The Aurora's hull glowed red-hot from repeated impacts as it forced its way through the Devourer defensive network. Davis watched his ship fall apart around him but kept flying toward the massive construct at the center of the enemy formation. "Quantum Virus is armed and ready," his weapons officer reported. "We need to get within 50 kilometers for effective deployment." Davis pushed his dying ship through the final defensive layer. The Aurora's engines failed just as they reached optimal range. With power failing throughout the ship, Davis manually triggered the quantum virus deployment. The effect was immediate and devastating. The virus spread through the Devourer quantum network faster than light, corrupting their command protocols and severing connections between individual ships. Across the galaxy, Devourer forces suddenly found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Morrison's fleet pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Without their hive-mind coordination, the machine ships were just advanced weapons platforms that could be destroyed by conventional means. Human forces swept through the scattered Devourer remnants with methodical efficiency. The war ended not with a grand battle, but with the systematic elimination of isolated enemy units throughout the galaxy. Within 3 weeks of the command nexus destruction, the last Devourer ship had been hunted down and destroyed. In the aftermath, Chancellor Vextar stood before the rebuilt council chambers, facing the representatives of species that had barely survived extinction. His blue skin pattern showed the deep shame and regret that had consumed him since the invasion began. "The Galactic Council owes its existence to humanity," he announced formally. "Without their intervention, every species in this chamber would be extinct. We offer full membership with unprecedented privileges, territorial grants, and technological sharing agreements." Admiral Parker's response came through a holographic projection from Earth. The man who had overseen humanity's expulsion now spoke as the representative of the galaxy's savior species. "Chancellor Vextar, we appreciate the gesture, but humanity has learned the value of independence. We will work with the Council as equals, not as members. Our alliance will be based on mutual respect, not bureaucratic membership." The message was clear: humanity would cooperate with the galaxy, but would never again submit to alien judgment or authority. They had proven themselves in the crucible of war and earned the right to determine their own destiny. Dr. Zindar, one of the few council members who had always supported humanity, sent a private message to Dr. Foster. "Your species has saved us all. The galaxy will remember this debt for generations." President Mitchell addressed the human population from the Capitol building in Washington. "Today marks the beginning of a new era. Humanity stands as an equal partner in galactic affairs, respected for our strength and valued for our principles. We were dismissed as primitive warmongers. Instead, we proved that sometimes the galaxy needs warriors more than it needs diplomats." The story concluded with humanity establishing itself as an independent galactic power. The species that had been expelled for being too aggressive had saved the galaxy through controlled aggression applied with precision and purpose. The Council's greatest mistake had become their salvation, and the lesson was burned into galactic history. Never underestimate humanity's capacity for both war and mercy. In the end, humanity had been let go by a galaxy that thought it knew better. When that galaxy faced extinction, humanity chose to save it anyway. That choice defined not just their character, but their place among the stars forever.